The Late Great Planet Earth, Chapter 5. The next war will not be with the Arabs, but with the Russians. General Moshe Dayan, 1968. And come from your place out of the uttermost parts of the north, you and many peoples with you, all of them riding on horses, a great host, a mighty army, and you will come up against my people Israel, like a cloud covering the land. In the latter days I will bring you against my land, that the nations may know me, when through you, O Gog, I vindicate my holiness before their eyes. Ezekiel 38:15-16, 650 BC. Russia is a Gog, Chapter 5. The new state of Israel will be plagued by a certain pattern of events which has been clearly forecasted. Shortly after the restoration of the Jews in the land of Israel, an incredible enemy will arise to its uttermost north. This enemy will be composed of one great nation, which will gather around it a number of allies. It is this Northern Confederacy that is destined to plunge the world into its final great war, which Christ will return to end. When I was a teenager watching the end of World War II, facing the continued fear of another war, I wondered then how it would all end. I once heard a radio program with a minister saying that the Bible indicated that this last war of the world would be fought between nations symbolized by an eagle and a bear. That was interesting to me, but he didn't back up his remarks with any definite proof. Even though I wasn't religious or interested in the Bible, I still spent many hours in bull sessions about this subject with other men who were as irreligious as myself. Little did I realize at that time how definite the Bible is about who the nations will be that play the major roles in the last drama. There is certainly more revealed than the vague symbols of an eagle and a bear. There are three major prophecies on this northern sphere of political power, which are to be found in Ezekiel 38, Daniel 11, and Joel 2. It is of paramount importance to identify the time to which these prophecies apply, who the leading nation of the Confederacy is, and who the allies are. Then we shall see what this Northern Confederacy will do and how it will end. What time is it? There are several clues in Ezekiel's prophecy which establish the time to which it applies. First, several times in the prophecy, it is ascribed to the latter years, Ezekiel 38:8, and the latter days, which have been previously noted, Ezekiel 38:16. These are definite terms which denote the time just preceding and including the events which will be climaxed by the second advent of Jesus Christ, who will come this time as the reigning Messiah to set up God's promised kingdom. Second, this prediction is found in a context with a definite chronological sequence of events. Ezekiel 36 and 37 speak of the final restoration of the Jews to the land of Palestine, a restoration from which they will never be scattered again. This restoration has two distinctions which show that it couldn't be speaking of the time when the Jews returned from the Babylonian exile. The first distinction is that they are to return from a long worldwide dispersion. The Babylonian dispersion wasn't very long, nor was it worldwide. The second distinction is that this restoration is immediately prior to and connected with the period of tribulation. This period brings about a great spiritual rebirth, of the nation and the return of Jesus the Messiah to rescue them from their enemies. Ezekiel speaks of the physical restoration of the nation when he says, "But you, O mountains of Israel, shall shoot forth your branches and yield your fruit to my people, Israel, for they are soon to come home." Ezekiel 36:8. And again from Ezekiel, "For I will take you from among the nations and gather you out of all countries and bring you into your own land." Ezekiel 36:24. Ezekiel then foretells the spiritual regeneration of the people at some point after they are restored as a nation when he says, "Then I will sprinkle clean water upon you, and you shall be clean from all your uncleanliness, and from all your idols I will cleanse you. A new heart I will give you, and a new spirit I will put within you, and I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit within you, and cause you to walk in my statutes." Ezekiel 36:25-27. The parable of Ezekiel describes these same events in this sequence. First, the physical restoration as a nation in the land, and then the spiritual rebirth of the people. Ezekiel explains the prophetic vision, indicating the dry bones as the whole house of Israel, hopelessly scattered throughout the nations of the world. Ezekiel 37:11. The bones coming together and sinews and flesh being put upon them is explained as meaning the regathering of the people into a physical restoration of a national existence in Palestine. Isn't it fascinating how graphic this physical analogy is? Ezekiel's vision, however, goes beyond the purely physical. It says, "But there was no breath or spirit in them." Ezekiel 37:8. This indicates that the real spiritual life would come with the rebirth of the people after the restoration. This restoration and spiritual rebirth of the nation is to be the beginning of the everlasting kingdom which the Messiah is promised to bring. Ezekiel says, "I will make a covenant of peace with them. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them. I will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forevermore." Ezekiel 37:26. Study Ezekiel 38 and 39. The most significant part of this chain of events is established here. These chapters indicate with certainty that after the physical restoration of the nation, but before the spiritual rebirth, the great northern enemy will invade Israel. Ezekiel 38:8 and 16. Then God will supernaturally judge the northern invaders, and this is the very act which will impel the Israeli people to know and believe in their true Messiah, Jesus Christ. Ezekiel 39:6-8. Zechariah beautifully described this scene when he quotes God as saying, "And I will pour out upon the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of compassion and supplication, so that when they look on him who they have pierced, they shall mourn for him as one mourns for an only child." Zechariah 12:10. Ezekiel speaks in chapters 40-48 of a new worship pattern which will be established after the Messiah, Jesus Christ, comes to reign on earth over the kingdom of God. Since the restoration of Israel as a nation in 1948, we have lived in the most significant period of prophetic history. We are living in the times which Ezekiel predicted in chapters 38 and 39. In 1854, a scholar named Chamberlain summed up the crux of what has just been said. In commenting on Ezekiel 38, he observed, "From all which I should infer, the coming restoration of Israel will at first be gradual and pacific. a restoration permitted, if not assisted and encouraged or protected. They will return to occupy the whole land, both cities and villages. They will be settled there, become prosperous, and increase in wealth before this great confederacy of northern people will be formed against them. Consider that Chamberlain wrote this over 100 years ago, long before Israel was a nation assisted and encouraged by other countries. Who is the northern commander? For centuries, long before the current events could have influenced the interpreter's ideas, men have recognized that Ezekiel's prophecy about the northern commander referred to Russia. Dr. John Cumming, writing in 1864, said, "This king of the north I conceive to be the autocrat of Russia, that Russia occupies a place, and a very momentous place, in the prophetic word that has been admitted by almost all expositors." What's the evidence? Ezekiel describes this northern commander as Gog of the land of Magog, the chief prince or ruler of Rosh, of Meshech, and Tubal. Ezekiel 38:2. This gives the ethnic background of this commander and his people. In other words, the prophet gives the family tree of this northern commander so that we can trace the migrations of these tribes to the modern nation that we know. Gog is the symbolic name of the nation's leader, and Magog is land. He is also the prince of the ancient people who were called Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. In the biblical chapter commonly called the Table of Nations by scholars, these names are mentioned. See Genesis 10. They are described as the grandsons of Noah through his son Japheth, with the exception of Rosh. Genesis 10:1-2. Magog is the second son, Tubal is the fifth son, and Meshech is the sixth son. Tubal is the fifth son, and Meshech is the sixth son. You must all be excited about Magog, Meshech, and Tubal by this time. You're probably saying, what in the world do these crusty relics of fiction have to do with Russia? Let this writer assure you, these names are not fiction, but they have turned up in many archaeological discoveries in very early accounts of ancient history. One reason for this is that the families of these forefathers adopted their names as tribal names. The family descended from Magog became known as the tribe of Magog, etc.